Welcome to UberCube, the podcast where we discuss all things cube, but with refreshments. This is your host, Anthony Adams, aka UberBear, and I'm joined by my other host,
Stu. Welcome to the show. And we also have with us today a very special and esteemed guest, Mr. Jbro himself, Jonathan Brostoff.
Hey! What's up, homies?
What are your catchphrases? You've got some interesting catchphrases. Can you hit us with some of that, Trax? Come on, bring it out. Let's.
It's hard to keep track. I actually used to. It's funny. Well before I was a known Cube personality, I was a coffee shop regular at this place, Rochambeau, which was recently noted one of the most quirky coffee shops in the world by some magazine. But when I was a youth, we'd hang out there, and there's two friends of mine, Aaron and Sarah, and they used to just sip coffee and hang out with me all day, every day with a group of other folks. And they kept a book of Jonathanisms, just little quirky things I would come up with. And I don't know where that book went, but we should publish that someday.
Yeah, before Lizard Lick Towing gets a hold of it, you might want to hurry up.
Yeah, that's just... But I will admit I'm a little... you're getting only about 13% Jbro tonight because I'm on like zero sleep. We've got a 4-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, and an 11-month-old that are kicking my butt. We've got our next one on the way in a couple weeks, so I'm
Congratulations.
Very little sleep with a very demanding job, so I might not be at full capacity. My 13% is more than most people's 90. So
yeah, I was going to say
anyway.
You're probably going to be. That's about my 95 to 100%. Probably you're 13.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to be good.
Yeah,
let's go.
So we've got a pretty cool episode this evening, and we're going to talk about a topic that it's going to be kind of along the lines of life gain, life loss, in so many words, and about including lifelink in your cube. What's the appropriate volume that maybe you can have in your cube? Do you dislike it? Do you love it? Just the topic in general, stabilization versus domination. But that's just an overview. But before we go any further down this yellow brick road, we're going to do the thing that we always do here at UberCube. We're going to enjoy our libations of the show.
We are.
Jbro, you're our guest. What are you having this evening?
I have a blackberry citrus tea.
That sounds delicious.
In a crunk cup. Look at that cup.
Yep.
That is glorious.
That's right.
It's a mason
Goddamn
jar.
Right.
Anthony, what you got for us today?
I am having a juicy bear hug, which sounds gross to say out loud. Hazy IPA, and it sounds pretty good.
Nice. I got myself a Guinness, and I'm still waiting for that sponsorship, from Guinness. So I think I've given them enough shout-outs. I'm owed one.
As we digress even further, I'm going to Dublin in about a week, I will be going to the Guinness factory.
Ask them.
And I will be asking them. I will be playing my podcast ad nauseum out
You
loud.
should.
Yes,
Ask them for some sponsorship.
I am going to tell them, listen to this, how many times we talk about your product. But let's crack it open and get to the topic.
All right. So life gain, and let's start out with the card that kind of, I don't want to say started it all, but is maybe a bit of a forgotten relic of yesteryear, right? This is a OG card that was printed in alpha. And Anthony, I know this is a favorite of yours.
Healing Salve. And for one plane to get an instant, choose one. Target player gains 3 life or prevent 3 damage that would be dealt to target creature or player this turn.
What a flavorful card.
It was the antithesis to Bolt back then, which is the same cycle, right? And this is kind of sets that tone, and Jbro, I'm going to lean on you this one. This sets that tone of stabilization, right? That card didn't win the game. That card saved you from losing the game. And that was the difference back then. This is before, and later down the road, we see cards that begin to get the life leak. It wasn't really written as such, but it would be when target creature does damage, you gain that much life, something along those lines. But we start seeing this insertion or this large volume of lifelink creatures that are getting printed ad nauseum by wizards as of late. And I think the three of us at the table, Jbro, I'd like your thoughts on this. I like lifelink for the stabilization portion. I dislike it for the domination, and we'll explain what that means later. But what are your thoughts on lifelink as a mechanic?
I love it. I think that it's a very misunderstood dynamic in the cube. And life gain in general, I like a lot. Usually my ratio is 4 life to 1 card. So if you gain 4 life, it's about the equivalent of drawing a card. If you gain 2 life, it's basically, to me, worth about half a card. And I can elaborate on that a little bit more later. But I like it quite a bit, and I have used it to great success in my cube career. Healing Salve, we'll talk about that. I did not play in alpha, but I played in the early 90s, and that was by far the weakest of the set when he had Ancestral Recall, Dark Ritual, Lightning Bolt, Giant Growth, Healing Salve, strongest to weakest in that order. But the art was cool. It was, I think that was a Frazier, but I like the art. The art was pretty cool.
It's Frazier.
But,
it is
Frazier.
Very cool.
Pure trash. But it did.
Well, it does negate your bolt. It negates your bolt, negates your Giant Growth. Let's give it a little bit of credit. It did counterman 2 of those spells. I mean, it did. It was
but even that, even that. So let's take that on face value. So first of all, in order to counter it, you can only have it for that purpose at that time when something's going to take lethal damage or whatever. So in other words, whereas having Lightning Bolt or Giant Growth is always good or if you have a creature, I suppose, but it's more often good because it's proactive. Healing Salve is less proactive and therefore worse by definition. But it did open the door to a very interesting dynamic that I think became wildly powerful later on, which is the life gain, and we'll get into why that is later. But I love life gain as a thing. I love lifelink. I think it's wonderful for a lot of different reasons.
Well,
but
based on
in
that,
essence, I'll just touch on it right now, I suppose. This maybe will get us to our pros and cons.
That's what I was going to tell you to take on.
Life gain, people always say there's a common phrase, life is a resource. And that's used in a ticking down way, meaning, one life is as good as 20, like, you can lose life, you can take a hit, don't lose your creature, stuff like that's how it's kind of like used, like life is a resource. But it goes the other way too, meaning as you're gaining more of that resource, it affords you more ability to do more stuff. So, life as a resource goes both ways, although it's almost exclusively used in the negative. But it's an important way to think about it, just like mana is a resource, threat density is a resource, etc. Life is a resource, and that goes both ways.
Yeah. The thing I like about it, and we did break it down, this will be included in the show notes. I did a very topical pros and cons of lifelink, life gain in general. And one of the things I listed, and this is my favorite, it allows you to play to your outs. That makes for an exciting interchange, the game. It's not anticlimactic. You're coming at me, you have lethal on the board, and it's we'll call it like a fog or something along those lines. That one time where you stopped from getting trampled over. Well, this will stop you from taking that death trigger from that lightning bolt, etc. And it makes for an exciting storytelling. That's what I like about it, playing to your outs. Lets people take it to the limit, red line, right? It's an interesting way of playing. Some players love that. What I don't want out of my games of Magic is just a depleting life total going to 0, right? I understand life is a resource, but I do like the ebbs and flows of a game where it's more like chess, not checkers, is what I'm looking for in a game. But as we progress, and we'll talk about in our cons, I'll jump into that. What I don't want is start getting these huge delta spreads where lifelink starts creating so much life delta, a delta. Like, as you gain 4, I lose 4. It starts creating a delta of 8. It doesn't appear that way on paper, but Cube seldom has, like Commander, a blackjack where there's no commander damage to take them out. So now you're looking for, and I'm jumping way ahead of my script here, but it's an important point. Now you're looking as a curator, you need to add things. If you're going to be so saturated with life gain, now you need to find ways that your players can have outs outside of
that work around the life
creature
gain.
damage.
Like if I want to win, and if you're gaining 50 million life or whatever, I mean that's an astronomical number, but in effect, 50 million could be the same as 1,000 in a cube if you're trying to swing for 2 and 3 damage at a time.
Right, and we're going to expound upon that as we go through. I want to be kind of topical at this point, but we do have points.
Sure.
Jbro, do you see these pros I got up here? Do you have any feelings on those?
All right, pros: play to your outs, stabilization during games, stay out of bolt range, and supports control/mid-range strategies. Very good.
Yep.
Like that. Cons: prolonged games. Wait, why is prolonged games a con? I love prolonged games.
Mirror matches of life games. We're going to talk about that. They're horrible.
Time considerations during matches. Okay. Maybe that belongs under prolonged games. That is a point. Stalemates in the mirror match. Okay. Diminishes aggressive strategies. Again, I like that. Defund the fun police. That's what I say.
Yeah.
Impedes red burn decks. I like both of those things.
Yeah.
Defund the fun police.
It's the
but
fun
yeah,
police.
I think that that's pretty much, I think that's good. And I would say like to the play to your outs point, that's one I was kind of touching on earlier, how I see it as a card. So what does it mean, play to your outs? Well, like you get to, it's, to me, life gain is worth cards in a sense because the additional life you gain might mean you get extra turn, which means you're drawing an extra card, which is, like I said, kind of playing to your outs in here. So it's giving you, longer to do your thing. And I guess it also just really depends on your style of play. If you're like a dirtle turtle like myself, you like to be able to, do your thing and be able to stick around long enough to do it. And if you're a red mage who likes to, just jam in,
Yeah, I want to do 500 damage by turn 3. Like that's where
then it's not so good. But I think these are good. What is the term oversaturation mean in this context? I think
I'm referring to too much of a good thing. When you life gain, and we'll talk about that. I'm running the percentages in our cubes, and actually ran chills as well and some others. But when I say if you have too much life gain in an environment, you're going to run into more mirror match potential and more of games where it's just armies are constantly colliding with one another, and it's a constant delta gain of life, right? And the game never ends. These all kind of scrunch together, right? So we're doing let's pretend we're doing a 50-minute match, right? We're doing a time match at CubeCon, which we're going to be at in 2023, right? But you could see where life gain could create problems where people are, especially in a mirror match where they're already on a clock. You've got other rotations that need to happen, and you've got two people locking horns, constantly gaining and losing life.
I mean, I can give an example.
Stalemating.
I don't know if this is a little bit further down than we originally planned.
Exactly what I wanted to do. Yeah.
So, I had drafted a cube with a good friend of ours, David Woolsey. It was his mono white cube, and part of his cube is life gain. And
as an archetype,
bear in mind, you show up to your friend's house, and you're like, right, we're going to cube, we're going to have a whole bunch of fun, And I don't know if I played another game that night.
You did not.
Because it was him on life gain versus me on life gain. And literally all we did was just gain life and then take a bit of damage and then gain some more life and then take some damage. But it got to the point where the decks aren't doing anything anymore because you're just cycling through, like, is there anything in my deck that I can realistically use now that's going to counter this huge upswing of life? There wasn't enough downswing in the life totals. There wasn't an alternative, like there wasn't infect in there, for example, right? And I'm sure we'll get to, alternatives to be able to win. And it was fun, kind of, because you're kind of going back and forth. But I'm not an aggro player in like the truest sense, as much as I enjoy playing them. I like my mono white decks, and I don't mind playing mono red and so on and so forth. But it just felt it was a grind for the sake of grinding it out and just trying to finish the game. And I think he won both. He did win them both, but it wasn't an enjoyable experience to just sit there and watch our life totals go up and down, but more up than down, and just kind of grind it out.
So that kind of answers your oversaturation question that you had asked about. Too much of a good thing is what I'm trying to say in so many words. So as a curator, you want to be mindful for it because your players will take advantage of it. Why would they not, right? Why would they not draft it? So you just want to be mindful, which is going to kind of roll up into our kind of what I did here for the next portion. I ran over the Soul Cube, which is ChillMTG's, as well as mine, and I wanted to get an idea of the distribution of things with life gain. So we have some examples, and what we talked about is the oversaturation piece. And when I ran the numbers in my cube, I've got approximately 2% of my 540 that represents some form of life gain, and that didn't include Jitte, by the way. I didn't actually come up. But what I'm saying is life link is whenever I did a search in Cube Cobra. And some examples within my cube, and we're going to go over another cube here in a moment, would be stuff like Batterskull and Intrepid Adversary, which we'll cover in a moment. Murderous Rider, Nighthawk Scavenger. Got a lot of different things in there that do things that allow your game exchange life total to occur. But what was interesting is when I ran Chills, which I'm gonna pass this over to Jbro to check it out. Some of these cards have different dynamics, yet they're all lifelink-esque, and you'll see why. Jbro, would you mind taking on this first one, please? Intrepid Adversary.
Sure. We've got Intrepid Adversary. So this is quite a card. Back in my day, we used to have white 3/1s for 1 and a white that were just cats with big swords and no text, and we were happy about that. But this is quite an upgrade. It has lifelink. It's also, which again, just a 3/1 lifelink for 2 is really, really good, in my opinion, compared to what we used to have. But it does more. It also, when it comes into play, you can pay 1 and a white any amount of times, and for each time you do it, creatures you control get +1/+1 for each of those counters on them, including Intrepid Adversary. So it's really, really, really powerful.
This is the best one of
great
that adversary
early,
cycle,
it's great
in my
late,
opinion. Yeah.
it's good in white weenie because it can, anything, and also anything with lifelink, especially in white, you have to remember also gets a little bonus point because of swords and equipment in general. So it's really good early. It's really good late. It's also a card that if you can get it back from your graveyard, you can pump it up more. If you blink it, you can pump it up. It's whenever it enters the battlefield, not when it's cast.
It's not a cast and cast.
And it's also just sometimes an overrun for white. Like sometimes late game, you just top deck a 8 casting cost, all your creatures get +3/+3, 6/4, and it's really good.
Yeah, that's the end of the game, probably.
What's interesting about this card, let me ask you a question, and this will be for Jbro, then I'm asking the same question. Would you consider this card Stabilization or Domination if you had to put them in 2 silos? Which silo would you put this card in?
I think well, first of all, I like that it rhymes. That's number one. I would say that it depends on the context, but in general, I think that this is more of a dominating card that can stabilize and a stabilizing card that can dominate. Meaning, again, it's like late. It's late game ability is just on point. It's not as good for stabilization and as domination in that it's only got 1 toughness at base. So if you're casting it for 2, it's easily binked off, and then you're not going to gain life off it. Or even if it trades, you gain life. It's only once. So that's how But it also is a really good stabilizing force. Sometimes, like again, with equipment, with other stuff, it can get out of hand pretty quick. But it's just a great card. I think it's But I would put it in the domination category. Gun to my head.
Yeah, so as we work through these cards, I'm going to do this unique way. I think it's an interesting way of looking at lifelink. So to put to make this more tangible, when I'm saying stabilization, it's allowing the player to recoup, to stabilize, to not die to the quote-unquote bolt, right? You get out of that range of death.
Yeah.
Domination, to put that definition on there that I'm doing, it's whenever it's taking over the game, it's creating such a delta that it's unrecoverable by the opponent. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, as we progress through these cards, and the storytelling that I'm doing, I'm going to explain the reason why I chose to write this episode. And I'll go ahead and cut to that now. The reason why I chose to take on this topic is our good friend Christian, who's hiding in the corner. He's very REM right now, right? He has a Bant's enchantment cube. And what I love about it is every time we play a game of Magic, and this is just something I do, I'm a writer by nature. We're playing cards, I see something, and we're in the middle of the game, and I'm writing an episode in my mind, right? So the interchange that was occurring during this cube was he's got auras and creatures, right? It's very Bant enchantment. I mean, it's on the nose. But he had a creature with lifelink and when he puts any kind of aura on that creature with lifelink just gets bigger, but the base model of that creature in his particular cube is a lifelink creature.
Right.
And the argument that we were having, and this may not make a lot of sense to the audience, is it was more healthy, in my opinion, that the creatures do not have lifelink,
but the enchantments
do, because of the restriction of the 3-color Bant. Is you can dismantle the components, but he had less kill spells to kill the core creature. So a Rancor, if that makes sense to everybody, I know that's a very intangible thing, but it was the verses. Is it better that the core creature has the mechanic, or that you give the creature the mechanic? And I think, in my opinion, the better outcome is that you give the creature the mechanic, and that would be the domination versus stabilization. And in this storytelling that I'm doing, I had our good friend down to 1 life. And he dropped a lifelink creature and just threw 1 or 2 enchantments on it, and he was getting spreads of 12.
Yeah,
I mean, it was he dominated, and I said, pause. I'm writing an episode. This is a one-off. I get it, but I should have killed you here. And now, because of this whole scenario of you've now made this Gojira that I cannot deal with. It's too much. I can't kill it.
And I think this actually leads nicely because
into the next one,
right? And I'm not going to go left to right on this, so I'm going to take it out of order. But Solitude is a newer card. It's an absolute house across the board, right? So I don't know how much introduction this needs, but it's 3 colorless, 2 white. It has flying and lifelink, and it's basically Swords to Plowshares on a stick.
Flash and lifelink.
Flash and lifelink, right? This is a card that, for me, is like the pinnacle of stabilization.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
I would actually argue it's better than Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah, of course.
In a couple ways.
Yeah.
It's
with the evoke,
because it's when it is Swords to Plowshares, and that's the effect, but it's ETB. So you can blink it, you can recur it, you can cast it for free.
Yeah.
Swords to Plowshares cost 1 whole mana. This thing's free.
You replace Swords to Plowshares,
you're getting as expensive as
Plowshares with an
Healing
Ephemerate.
Salve or something.
Yeah.
You pitch your Healing Salve to cast this.
That's right.
Bang straight. But like you say, you can the utility that you've got with any kind of creature, obviously, that's got so much built on top of it, right? Obviously, the evoke cost is just gravy, in my opinion. But the fact that you can blink it and exile their creatures, and for me, very much stabilization. It's not pumping your board or wiping a whole bunch out. But I like this as a stabilizer.
I think it's reactive, not proactive. Is that where we're agreeing
I
on?
agree 100%.
So if we put in a categorization, it'd be stabilization, not domination. Yep. Although it will recoup you life, but it's not its sole purpose. It's dealing with a threat. I mean, let's just be honest. The lifelink is icing, is what we'll call this. Yeah. Okay. Well, what about this next one, Jbro? Would you mind taking on Steel Seraph? This is a huge. I know that Chill is absolutely in love with this card. I mean, he is speaking high of it.
Should be.
And I'm going to ask, should I be running this in my Powered Vintage Cube? I'm currently running it in my Artifact Cube, which I'm going to definitely submit again to CubeCon because I want to.
Hell yeah.
But I want to know, is this Powered Vintage worthy in your opinion?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's one of the best white 3-drops ever printed. So Steel Seraph is got 2 casting costs. Its initial one is 6, and then it comes in as a 5/4 flyer. And at the beginning of your combat step, you can choose either to give something flying, lifelink, or vigilance, one of your creatures. But for 1 white, you can also cast as a 3/3 with the same abilities. It's insane. Not only does it do something right away, but even, again, back in my day, 1 white for a 3/3 white creature would never get anything like these sorts of abilities. It's just bonkers. So, yeah, it's something that can fly over and bink planeswalkers. Sometimes you want one of your big daddy fatties to get vigilance. Sometimes you need the lifelink. And also, again, it triggers right away. So you cast it and you get to jump something immediately and take out an Oko or whatever. So it is... and also, sometimes you just want a 6-drop that's also a 5/4. Sometimes you can do that. It's so versatile. It's worth your while. It's definitely a dominator, 100%.
And it definitely plays in that artifact.deck theme that I run in my Powered Vintage Cube. So I think you've convinced me. I've been on the fence with it. Honestly, I haven't got a chance to play it in my Artifact Cube, so I'd be curious.
Almost might be a bit OP.
I don't think so.
Almost.
And the Artifact Cube has such a balanced amount of Abrade effects and Rex Sage effects that while this card is amazing, there's a lot of ways to kill it. I mean, it's highly vulnerable in that environment. Maybe more vulnerable in that environment than it is in my Powered Vintage, to be honest with you. I mean, aside from hand stripping and whatnot. Here's an old OG one that kind of tips the scales when we're talking about. And I know we've got this brand new shiny Atraxa, and we've got the Archon of Cruelty that does the things. But we have OG Grizzlebrand. And for 4 colorless and 4 swamps, you get a Legendary Demon, Flying Lifelink, pay 7 life, draw 7 cards, 7/7 flyer.
Yeah.
With Trample? No, flying.
Just flying.
Flying lifelink, good enough for government work. But what's interesting about this card is it tips those scales. What Jbro was alluding to before about life gain, life loss. It's such a weird thing. It's a risk it for the biscuit kind of card, right? So you can change 7 life into currency and get 7 cards. I mean, that's valuable in itself, right?
Yes.
But now you've made yourself vulnerable to those life threats of the bolts, etc., depending where your life total's at from 20, obviously. But this card has such an interesting build-around dynamic to it. Is this a dominator or is this a stabilizer to you?
I'm going to call it a dominator.
I do too. Once it's hit the field, things have red flagged hard. You're in trouble.
The fact that you're only getting to, or you only have to pay 7 life to draw 7 cards is kind of outrageous value. Obviously, it's an 8-cost creature, typically, right? It's 4 colorless and 4 black, right? That's heavy. Obviously, for the most part, it's been traditionally like the baby of the reanimator packages, but that is just insane value to be able to draw 7 life to get 7 cards and swing with it if you get to, which. Honestly, this is one of those cards. If you do get to swing with it once and even draw 7 or draw 14, heaven forbid, that's just, you're ending the game just by value alone on that.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Jbro, if it did not have lifelink on it, would you still think this is a good card?
Oh, yeah, of course. Paying 7 life to draw 7 cards is awesome.
Yeah.
But
it's an interesting way of thinking about it.
It would be such a different card. But yeah, it's great. Although somehow it is in some ways getting outshined by another 8-drop black creature. But yeah, it's great. Grizzlebrand's great. He does something very specific. And yeah, it's great. Great card.
I think
Love it.
Archon's
Although,
better.
it's interesting, like, I thought one of the big here's an interesting, point. Some people say, well, why would Archon of Cruelty even be in contention with Grizzlebrand? It's 7 life versus 3. It's 1 card versus 7, And really, it's that it's lifelink versus an ETB life gain. In other words, with Grizzlebrand, it can be go for the throated, or you can block and then bolt a creature, or or block and tear your own creature, whatever. And with an ETB effect, even though it's only 3 life, it's so much more powerful to happen right away and to be able to be a consistent. That it's possible. I guess Grizzlebrand might have a higher ceiling in some situations, or in many, because it draws 7, but I think Archon is overall probably a bit of a more consistent, powerful life gain Big Daddy Fatty. But yeah, Grizzlebrand's great. It'll always have a special place in Cube Hearts all around for sure.
Yeah,
I'm running the trifecta. I'm running the trifecta, man. I'm running the new Atraxa. I'm running Grizzlebrand, and I'm growing Archon.
I don't think there's anything unreasonable.
Yeah. So actually, this is a good tangent too, since you said, oh yeah, so we're going to CubeCon. We're going to keep talking about CubeCon 2023 coming up here in October. What were the dates, by the way? We're going to pause and plug CubeCon like nobody's business. What are the dates for CubeCon? Let's go.
October 19th through the 22nd, Madison, Wisconsin, mtgcubecon.com. You can get info or follow us at mtgcubecon on Twitter. And yeah, it's great. It's going to be, once again, the best 4 days in cubing. We're going to double the size and double the fun. And you guys got to come last time. What did you make of it?
It was sensational.
I loved it. It's the best con I've ever been to. It's amazing.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
This was a dream I had years ago, and I pitched it to a couple people. The only person to really bite on it initially was Justin Parnell after I won his Cube event, and then I slowly gathered a team of wizards from all over, and we were able to organize something, and then COVID hit, but then I scrambled to get everyone back on board, reorganized, and now we've had a successful one, and with that proof of concept, we're running it back, and it's going to be better and stronger than ever, and we have some awesome new opportunities coming with this one, so it should be a ton of fun, and hope to see you all there.
Oh yeah,
CubeCon. Yes. I've been waiting so long.
Oh, we've already booked our rental. I still have to get the car. I got the rental car. Still got to get the hotel in progress. Waiting for those points to accrue. My wife made me burn them all to go to Ireland. I know, but hey, I'm going back to see my people. I'm a redhead. I got to go back to my homeland. Yeah,
hell yeah.
But we're gonna.
And what was a highlight for you for last time?
I think to get to see people to play my artifact cube and to get the critiques and the fact that it was on Cloud Goat Ranger so that I could see viewpoints outside of my play group was one major highlight for it. And the other one is because during this time I actually had a personal tragedy that occurred, and it was the family that came together and made sure that I was taken care of. Yeah. I got to see brethren is what I'm trying to say in so many words. Yes. I got to see people talk about cube community, but I had a thing happen that was beyond cube, that word cube community. It was fantastic to see how loving this group was. So that was my true highlight, is that a bad situation was made brighter by amazing humans.
And I will say, I'm a people person. right? I like to be around people. I like to meet new people. I like to hang out with new people. And we showed up, and it was like we went into the hall and sat down, and we had a group of 8 people. We had the cubes going within a few minutes. We found out where everyone was staying in hotels. We're getting invited to hotels to play cube. We're getting people back to our hotel to cube and hang out. Like, it was just nonstop. And the like you say, the fellowship and the excitement of everybody just wanting to be there and hang out and cube and just play and just enjoy everything about it. It was just, for me, it was just a wonderful thing to do with so many wonderful people.
And this is the part where I do the boo, boo, boo. All right, this has been sponsored by CubeCon. All right, moving back to our episode. All right, so the next card we have, and we're gonna do this. You guys are gonna have to tolerate this. We got the great Jbro here. We have to prop up this CubeCon thing. We want to see it bigger, better, faster. It's gonna be amazing. The next card we have on our list is Wormcoil Engine, and most people are familiar with its Death Touch Lifelink. It is an artifact. It's a worm, which is really weird. 6/6. Whenever it dies, it splinters off and makes one of each, either Lifelink or Death Touch. 3/3. Jbro, in so many words, is this a domination or a stabilization card?
It's kind of both. It's an interesting mix. As soon as it hits the table, red mages run in fear unless they got like that 3/3 for 3 that stops life gain, or the 3 mana enchantment or something like that. But yeah, it's a great stabilizer. But it also carries, a big duty booty. It can come through in the clutch and end a game real quick. And when it dies, making additional lifelink creature and another 3/3 body to boot gives it such then of course there's other there's sneak attack and through the breach type effects that also can take advantage of that, or recurring nightmare type stuff, or da. So yeah, I mean it I would say it's a pretty good mix of both, and I've been on both sides of it. I've top deck and be like, all right, we're back in this, and I've also had it be like, all right, this is the game change. This is how we're gonna, I often, especially in previous iterations of the cube a couple of years back, like to run very threat light decks for a while, just testing out that style, and it was a good threat for the deck, one of the few threats, and one that you knew you could dominate with. So I'd say I'd split it right down the middle. What about you? What's your assessment?
I'm going to say domination. And the reason why I say domination is because my metric for some of these like labels that we put on cards is, do you absolutely, positively, must 100% deal with this card, or it is going to win the game? And Wormcoil Engine has been like that for me more often than not when I've either played with it or played against it. It's either completely taken over the game for my opponent, or I've just used it to run away for victory. And I think there's just so many times where it's just, like I say, it's taken over, that I have to give it that domination label.
And doing that reference to the delta, so the life exchange is going to be a delta of 12, right? If they take the damage, we'll just go with that. But at least the floor on this card is going to be a delta of 6. And that's how you look at it. So I think if we're doing the domination versus stabilization, I feel like we can incorporate for categorization the amount of life that you gain from such card, right? As a way of looking at it from 40,000 feet in the air. So let's just do this together. We got a council of 3 here, right?
Okay.
So I think if I was going to do stabilization, the number would be 3 life, right? Using Bolt as my metric. Like, I'm going to kill you with Bolt. No, you're not. I'm going to gain 3 life, healing salve. You've stabilized. You didn't live. You didn't do anything. But if you played a card that says, I'm going to gain 6 life, you've now not really stabilized. You've actually, as you said before, you've netted card turns or time walked. You've survived more turns than you should have, right? You've extended your fate.
I like that metric as well, like the 4 life for a card or whatever, right? Because now assigning that value really does show, like, what now are you even willing to, or what do you have to put into a card like that to negate it, right? Because obviously, like Jbro said, it's not just the fact that you've got the 6 life, and like you mentioned with the 6 life and the death touch, but now it splits off, and now you've got a death toucher and a life linker that you've got to deal with, right? How much is that worth? and it's definitely worth a lot more than 1 card and 3-4 life, in my opinion.
Yeah,
it's so good.
So I think that's a good metric, is the bolt metric, using it as a delta for stabilization. So if I had to look at all those cards going across, and we didn't talk about all of them, I'd say Intrepid Adversary on its base rate is stabilization until you kick it, right? I'd say Steel Seraph was very dominating because that's a very aggressive, proactive card. Solitude falls into that 3, right? If you even care about the lifelink, it's stabilizing.
I think the lifelink is kind of gravy on Solitude.
It is.
It's more the fact that you can get, evoke. You've got a free Swords to Plowshares, right? Or even just flashing it in for 5 mana can be incredibly powerful, right? But either way, that's more a stabilization.
Yeah, we here at UberCube are always looking for coinage and categorization. If you haven't noticed that from our previous episode, meta. So when we're talking about these things, I think it makes more palatable, right? What's your metric for inclusion? So not only am I doing percentage and saturation of lifelink in my environments, but maybe part of my consideration is how much lifelink does it carry? You said a minute ago, that big old booty. Like, if it does so much, is it still healthy? Are you going to start getting these huge spreads that are unrecoverable? So let's move over to something that's a little bit more healthy for the environment. All right. So one of the mechanics that's very healthy, and I want to get your viewpoints on this, Jbro, is the food mechanic. As an idea, cards like Gilded Goose. I'm going to throw an Oko in here. I know that's a thing. I'm gonna include in the show notes Bake into a Pie as kind of a really cool but dumpy removal spell, and then the Underworld Cookbook, which is a card that I'm truly in love with. All these have a way of creating a food. What are your thoughts on food as a mechanic in cubes from a top level?
I love it. I think it's great. I think it's an interesting mix of, like, generally speaking, what I like are things that give you more things to do. So, food can be something where it's a simple balance between mana being used and life, 2 resources, and you have to, find that balance. But it also has other uses, such as what Gilded Goose or Oko can do with it, turning into stuff. Or you can have things that copy tokens, or you can have things that tap artifacts that do other things if you tap artifacts, like, basically add mana to your pool or reduce costs. Or it can be turned into a 4/4 creature sometimes, or you can do all sorts of stuff with it. So I love it. I like things that let you do other things, that create more complexity within the game and more choices and decision trees. So food does that. I like food. Nom 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 nom.
I love. You know what I love food about? Because it's a callback to Healing Salve. That was where I wanted to kind of bring this all back to, right? It gets back to that core element of stabilization, the point of lifelink, right? To stay in the game, play to your outs, etc. Gilded Goose, in my opinion, is one of the most perfect Magic cards ever made. It's just elegant. It is an absolutely beautiful card. It makes mana. It protects you from flyers. You can put equipment on it and attack with it. You can't crew with it into a copter. I get it. But the card is just beautiful. It's versatile. And then having that little gravy with, I can make some more food, gain that 3 life, perpetually stay outside of the lightning strike, the bolts. We can go on and on with all this awful red player stuff, right? Bolt the Bird. Do you bolt? Let me ask you a question. So we had an episode about Bolt the Bird, and we did this whole question answer thing. Do you cook the goose, Jbro?
Do you roast the goose that's already produced?
Yes.
A food. Do I just bolt it right away?
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Of course. It adds mana. It can, and that's the other thing about Goose. It's so interesting. Not only is it a 2 toughness, which is, relevant literally twice as much as Birds of Paradise, but it also, again, can make more food, which can create more decisions down the line. And every single turn, gaining 3 life. I mean, it's 4 mana, but nonetheless, every single turn, gaining 3 life is, to me, drawing 3 force of the card in some context. So it's a pretty cool card.
Tom Cruise, if you're listening to this, late. Maverick, I'm so sorry that we've killed Goose multiple times here, but it's got to happen, right?
I will actually
gotta kill the goose.
I would say Bake into a Pie is another one.
What is that card? What is that card? What does that card
we
do?
have in our show notes, right?
I love
so
it.
bake into a pie, 2 colors, 2 black, instant, destroy target creature, create a food token, right? That is such.
It's gorgeous.
Obviously, it was jumpstart around Eldraine, so all the the fairy tale creatures and all that kind of stuff. But to me, same kind of deal. Very elegant. Obviously, kind of overcasted for a high power environment for a removal spell, but you get a food token, and depending on the deck that you're making, if artifacts are a big deal, or any kind of permanent that you want to be able to sacrifice or do something with, very, very strong.
I have a Guillaume EDH deck that is entirely food. It is the silliest nonsense you've ever seen in your life. It is just an entire deck based around chefs, cooking goose, making pie. It's so wild. But food is fun to me. I love it. It's just such a callback to Healing Salve that I think it makes the game better. It creates tokens that you can interact with in artifact environments, etc. Just absolutely in love with that mechanic. I'd love to see more from it. Let's kind of switch over now. Let's get into we're burning ourselves now. Why would we want to have lifelink to begin with? So why would we want to actually... We don't want to just dominate, right? We want to be able to have our life totals go ebb and flow up and down. How might we do that? Let's cover this first card. Jbro, would you mind taking on the OG Dark Confidant and why we might care about our life totals a little bit here?
Well, Dark Confidant gives and takes away. It gives you cards, takes away your life. So if you have more life, you theoretically should be able to get more cards. But some might argue that the best use of Dark Confidant, the best way to gain life off it is just by keeping relatively low CMC in your deck. And by the time that loss is relevant, you want to already be ending the games. It's a very aggressive card, fantastic card, but you kind of want to be just dominating with it versus stabilizing with it, as opposed to Bitter Blossom, which is more of a stabilization type card. And yeah, Balls Citadel, same thing.
Both Citadel,
I
push the greed level high, though.
Yeah,
I go so high. I push that one hard. So yeah, Bolt Citadel, out of those 3, most risk it for the biscuit. You really kind of want some lifelink, because I'm going to try to get some really gross things on the battlefield. I'm willing to pay 6 for a Worm Coil Engine to enter the battlefield so that I can try to reclaim that.
I have cheated that card out early in an EDH. I know we don't talk about that, but I have cheated that card out early and just taken myself down to like 5 life, because I'm like, screw it. This is so much fun. I just get to dump cards from the top of my library, and that's fun for me. Fun card.
So we're going to kind of move over to our final thoughts. And what we've kind of talked about is the variance between stabilization and domination. And I think as a group of 3, and feel free to push back, I think the number 3 was that target value. If a thing caused you to gain greater than 3, it transitioned over to dominating a game, because it created a net delta that was larger than, bolt range, right?
Right.
Whereas anything less than that, you're just trying to stay alive. You're playing to your outs. So, Jbro, any thoughts on balancing lifelink in your cube environments, oversaturation, the things we've talked about?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it really depends on what your overall philosophy is, and if you want to, there are some cubes where you might want more interactive, longer games. There's some cubes where you want, the average game to go 4, or 5 turns, and it really depends on what you're looking for, as well as, obviously, there's a sub-strategy within life gain that is its kind of own thing. Whenever you gain life, draw cards, or make creatures, or da-da-da. So, it really depends what you're going for, and I think it's a cube-by-cube basis, but overall, I say, in my taste, my preferences, err more on the side of as much lifelink and life gain as possible where it makes sense, and you can always adjust as needed, but I think far too often cubes are lacking it, and it's just more corner case, like the 1.8% we saw represented earlier in this discussion. So that's my preference, and I think it often leads to more interesting flow of a game. But again, if you're Ryan Sachs's combat cube or something else, you might feel very differently about that. It's just case by case basis. But if you are going to cut a lifelink, make sure you keep the best one ever made, life gain, which is Umezawa's Jitte, by far best life gain card of all time. What is your best life gain card of all time? What would you guys say?
It's Jitte. Yeah, we have a whole episode that I've written about why you should not include Jitte in an entire cube, and it's coming soon. Once we return back from our break, which will be later in April, you can expect to hear an episode. I've got that one written, and the other one's written already in the queue, and we're going to talk about that card extensively.
I'm going to give a shout out. I will give a shout out, though, and I think Jitte is ridiculous, but I have to, as been already mentioned, give the shout out to Swords to Plowshares. It's 1 mana, it's exile a creature.
Your own.
You can exile your own creature. To stabilize, right? I have done so in the past where I'm like, I have to block and then path or swords my own creature just to survive one more turn because I'm trying to top deck, maybe even a lightning bolt for the win.
Right.
So yeah, I think, but Jitte is ridiculous. Don't slot it in.
Another consideration too, when you have a large volume of lifelink or any kind of life gain situation is to give your opponents, and we didn't talk about this during the episode, other means to win the game outside of damage and creatures.
Well, I mentioned this early on, right? If you've got like
infect,
I think
combos,
infect, approach of the second sun,
anything
like
to get
that.
them out. Yeah,
Thassa's Oracle.
Yes,
a mill strategy that's in there, right? I agree. It can't just be that you've just got to keep swinging creatures back and forth. I think it is important to have that, those alternate ways to be able to end the game.
Alternate win cons is a good cube conversation going down the road too. I love alternate win cons. I'm all about it. Other than that, we just really want to thank Jbro for joining us. We are truly looking forward. One more plug for CubeCon. What do you got?
It's going to be the best 4 days in cubing. Come on down. In fact, you should probably come for day 0. Come a day early on that Wednesday if you can make it. But it's going to be a blast. You'll make some new friends. You have some lifelong memories. We're going to have a bunch of extra events. I'm going to do a capital tour again. Hope to see you both at Kubioki. We're going to be doing that. We're going to have a brand new spanking special theme song coming. That's going to be amazing. And we're going to have a lot of amazing, wonderful, cubetacular times there. And really, it's just going to bring a bunch of people who are passionate about cube together for some of the, a shared love of the best game ever made, which is Magic, and the best Magic ever made, which is Cube. So hope to see y'all there. Bless up. And also you get to hang with me, and we'll get to cube together, which is also fun.
Well, so that actually leads me to one thing, too. So Chill was supposed to join this evening, but his son's birthday is happening, and priorities. He's a father, loving dad, doing his thing, right? But as his penance for not coming on UberCube, I'm going to ask that he plays. We have to reenact this Jbro versus Chill fight, right? We saw this thing; it was live on YouTube. It was YouTube. We've all seen it, but I want to see it again. I'm going to bring my powered vintage cube. I want to do a side hotel match, right? This is going to be scandalous, right? We're going to get people to go in a circle, all the sweaty people with tank tops. You've all seen the 80s movies where people are going to fight, right? Fight Club.
Oh, yeah.
I want to see Fight Club, my powered vintage cube, with a very select amount of people, super secret, very, what's the old school, the speakeasy. So we're going to do this thing, right?
I'll be the guy.
Magic. Let's go.
I'm going to be the guy with the cigar, with the going around getting the betting slips and collecting the dollar bills.
Gummy bears, wrapped in, we're going to do the full blood sport. We got it covered. But I want to see this again. I'm calling Chill out. I want to see a rematch with my powered vintage cube versus Jbro. We'll intentionally set this up. We're going to make it happen. CubeCon 2023. Let's go. All right, Stu, can you take us over to the socials, please, sir?
I can. And as always, if you love the show, we would really appreciate a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. You can check out our affiliate link over at Alta Sleeves if you want to get 5% off your purchase over at Alta Sleeves. It is www.altasleeves.com/UberCube. We also have our Inked Gaming affiliate link. You can get that from our Discord as well as the Twitter. You want to check them out. They have some phenomenal playmats, dice bags, mouse pads, all kinds of cool custom products to bring out your cube, your EDH deck, or whatever Magic-related fun you're having. Check us out at Twitter. We are at UberCubeMTGPod. We like to, engage with the community, ask questions, get feedback about the podcast. And also, if you want to either give us feedback or reach out, you can hit us up via email. We are at UberCubeMTGPodcast@gmail.com. And as always, come check us out on the Discord, man. We always got a bunch of people in there hanging out, talking about Magic, talking about Cube. Anthony, give us a quick rundown about the Patreon. What's going on with that?
It's PBS. Moving on. All right.
Thank you. Welcome to public access here at UberCube. We appreciate it. You are the reason we are broke.
All right, so we're going to do the thing that we always do here at UberCube, and Jbro is going to join us, and we're going to say, Happy cubing. One more time, Jbro.
One more time.
Happy cubing.
Wait.
With
Tell me
zest.
that one more time.
After 3. 1, 2, 3.
Happy cubing. See you at CubeCon 2023. Let's go.